Let's start on the ATP side because we are arriving into week two in Rome for the Italian Open. So let's look back on all the action on the ATP side of things in week one, and we have to start. I know we've just sort of jokingly spoken about Jannik Sinner over the last kind of 5 minutes or so, but we need to talk now about the Sinner return because he's into the quarterfinals, had a nice win today against lucky loser Jesper de Jong. Started off again with a comfortable victory against Mariano Navone. But Chris, the big picture is here. There's been a lot of talk over the last few months whilst he's been serving out this suspension. The time for talking was over when he came back onto the court in Rome. What were your feelings, or what were you looking out for when he was stepping back onto the court, and how did you feel?
I was expecting him to play well, obviously, but I was also thinking with the time he had off, physically, he did look stronger. And I think when you probably have more time for some strength and conditioning, he looked a bit a bit thicker in terms of muscles. I think he maybe has added a bit of muscle there. We know that strength and conditioning wasn't always necessarily his forte prior to his ascent to world number one. Physically, there were issues. So I think it's been quite interesting to see that he does look a bit more sturdy. So
Mm.
that was a key takeout for me. I think he's hitting the ball as well as ever. I think it's probably just a few nerves in that first match. It wasn't the best match I've ever seen from him, but he doesn't have to be. He's winning pretty comfortably. He's looking good. He's getting it done. And I think that's probably all he'd want to do at this stage until he gets to the latter end of the tournament. But I mean, impressions from my side would be he's picked up pretty much where he left off. I think the serve could be a little bit better. I was a bit surprised that potentially he wasn't necessarily playing as well and he wasn't taking as many break points. But I mean, you need match practice and he hasn't had much of it. So I would say I was impressed, but I think there's room to improve.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because it feels like the next match is the big test, or the first big test, because he's got Francisco Cerundolo, who is one of the star performers this season. He's already got 26 wins in 2025. Great clay court player as well. The level that Sinner is at, do you feel like he's going to need to up it a little bit for someone like Cerundolo, who's been playing so well this season?
I think he will have to up it. I also think that Cerundolo is somebody who does have a little bit of a tendency not necessarily to close out the matches. And I think it might be a bit dicey at times. There could be a set that would go away from the world number one, but I do think that Sinner would still be the favourite going into that. I think, especially playing in Rome, I mean, we can't ignore it. I think, although we weren't necessarily celebrating in the way that some of his sponsors were celebrating him returning, the Italians were certainly rejoicing.
I know.
And that's
Yes.
going to have a big impact on the matches there because he really is feeling the love out there. And
What did you
Cerundolo,
what did you make of like the fans' reaction? It was obviously it was a packed court. It did, to me, it didn't feel like there were really any jeers, and I don't feel like that's really too surprising because he is at home. But does it sort of add to this kind of feeling that like nothing happened, nothing has changed, and we're sort of back really to just sort of carrying on from where Yannick Sinner left off?
I mean, I don't think lessons necessarily have been learned.
Mm.
I think even in the press conferences, he said he was pleased he didn't miss a grand slam, and I think it's probably like it just didn't really feel like he was banned. It felt like he was just taking a
Mm.
break from injury. I think that's also the lack of awareness from not just tennis fans, but also from wider tennis fans that maybe occasionally dabble in the sport. They're definitely not aware of what's been going on. So I don't think that necessarily the legacy of this will be too great. I think people will move on. I think people do want to move on because it has just exposed the uncomfortable
Mm.
truths that the doping system is, well, that's supposed to prevent doping, is actually very much not robust, and there's lots of problems with it, and lots of areas that need to improve, especially when it comes to preferential treatment and transparency. So I think people were just celebrating the fact the world number one is back on a tennis court. All the best players in the world, apart from Novak Djokovic, are in Rome, and I think that's something that we have missed in terms of
Mm.
the level of tennis and the fact that we might get some of these really big contests again because we have been spoiled over the last decades of
Yes.
Nadal and Federer and Djokovic and Murray. And when you do lose some star power, the tournament and the tour does suffer.
I agree. I think, just look, I say the pictures we saw, and even on his like practice sessions, it tennis needs Jannik Sinner, whether you like it or not, because he just generates such a buzz. And you think about that rivalry with Carlos Alcaraz, that is box office as well. That is going to attract people into the sport.
Big money, Joel. He's a big money player.
Yeah, exactly. And just his level on the court as well. It is, his natural talent is beautiful. I mean, he's 60-0 against players outside the top 20 since the start of the 2023 US Open. He's just kind of picking up where
we should be looking then, Joel, shouldn't we? So where is Cerundolo ranked at the moment?
I know.
Could there be a chance just inside?
He's number 8 in the race at the moment.
He's number 18 in the rankings. So there could be a chance there. But I mean, it is also one of those things where tennis is always in the news, but especially now, and I think it's added to the drama. And I think a lot of people do enjoy the drama of tennis. So we might not enjoy the nature of this drama, but it certainly is.
We don't get it in Hawkeye and Self. Well, actually, we do.
We do actually, yeah. We do.
Yeah.
We don't get it all the time when we're in. Actually a lot of drama. Geneva is going to have drama with Djokovic there. Maybe the stakes have just got higher, especially with likes of, Alcaraz back on the court as well, Joel.
Yes. Well, yeah, Alcaraz is back on the court. Arguably went a little bit under the radar, I think, because
he was away longer than Sinner, no?
Yes, because of Jannik Sinner. He had an abductor injury, so he missed Madrid, but he's back now. Had a nice win last night against Laszlo Djere, 7-6, 6-2. Started off a little bit scratchily, a little bit iffy, but I think he was very relieved to come through in 2 sets. I think there were a couple of physical issues as well for Djere. But what did you make of Carlos Alcaraz on his return? I didn't realise this. This is his first time, for all his clay court prowess, this is the first time he has reached the round of 16 at the Italian Open.
I mean, that really is surprising when you think about it. I mean, I would have thought he would have gone much deeper here, but you do get some quite strange results. I mean, Medvedev's won here, so maybe there is something to the fact that people tend to peak in one and not both, and maybe he had been prioritizing Madrid previously. I'm not sure, as I know he has missed it a couple of times, but I mean, he's back. I think he's probably a little bit tentative on the clay at the moment. I don't think it's been the most convincing of returns, but I think it's about getting yourself to some of the latter stage of the tournament. He is looking, I mean, Joel, we've talked about many different types of sleeve, the knee sleeve. He is sleeved up. Do we think that is more of a medical necessity, or is it a style choice, or do you think that it is actually helping his confidence out there with his injury?
I think it's helping his confidence. I think he probably is a little bit tentative at the moment, a little bit wary with the French Open coming up, just almost kind of wants to kind of get through Rome unscathed. So I think it's more of maybe, or hopefully I'm saying this as a,
peace of mind job.
Precautionary thing, exactly. But yes, I mean, interestingly, he plays Karen Khachanov next, and if he defeats Khachanov, he will have made the quarterfinals of every big event on tour. So Grand Slams, Masters 1000s, ATP finals. At his age, that is.
Oh, it took him a while, didn't it?
Impossible.
I mean, what was he playing at all these years?
I know. So good for Carlos Alcaraz. We'll have to see how he progresses. Dare I say, could we get an unexpected Sinner Alcaraz matchup in Rome? I'm not going to put it on anyone's lips.
Well, we didn't predict that, Joel.
We didn't predict it.
It probably will happen. Okay. Yeah,
it probably will happen. Just elsewhere, Jack Draper. He is also still in. He had a nice win yesterday against Vit Kopriva, the Czech player, 6-4, 6-3. Interestingly, I think he can reach number 4. And be 4th seeded for the French Open because Taylor Fritz has gone out early in Rome. But one thing, Chris, I wanted to bring up, in that match against Kopriva, he obliterated his racket and afterwards talked about the fact that in an interview with Sky Sports, when I get out of bed, I feel so angry some days, and I've got to play a tennis match and I've got to lose points, so I've got to go through those emotional ups and downs. Is there anything to read into that racket smash in terms of the rankings, how he's gone up the rankings, and maybe the extra pressure that he's feeling?
I mean, we can all relate to the fact that you do have those days where you're not in the best of moods. I
Mm.
think tennis has got a lot more serious for him. I think that's what that quote really tells me. Is before, I think he didn't necessarily have those levels of expectations for himself. I think he expects to play at a very, very high level now, because when he did smash that racket, he was up a set and a break. And normally you're not seeing people smash rackets at that point. That's quite unusual behavior. So I would say it's probably cause for a little bit of concern, because you do want to keep a little bit more balanced in those moments. And I don't think he needed to lift his game particularly. But I mean, he's got to lose points. You're going to have to lose a lot of points some days. You're going to lose more than you win. And I'm sure that he'll have to try and find a way to deal with that. And I dealt with that very well in Madrid, where he said, that it actually means I've got more work to do. I'm looking forward to doing that work. So we all lose our temper sometimes. I don't like all the swearing, though. I think he sometimes is a little bit too much in the Andy Murray school of thought in terms of letting it all out.
Mm.
It's not always the most elegant displays that we see from him. But he does still seem to be, trying to manage his own expectations for himself. And it is a very big year of change for him. So hopefully he can get his emotions in check as well.
Yeah, I think the positive thing was just kind of getting through. I mean, he had 24 unforced errors on his forehand. So to come through with a straight sets victory, regardless of who your opponent is and who their ranking is, I think he'll be very happy with that. And as you said, sorry, room for improvement indeed. We'll see how he continues into week two. And one player who also maybe is feeling the pressure, Alexander Zverev, Chris, he was caught in interview.
Yes.
Basically saying to an interviewer, you've asked a really stupid question, because they asked, you've had a couple of early exits in the Masters this year. So how nice is it to get one under your belt here? And yeah, as I said, Zverev was not happy with how this was framed, said it was a silly, stupid question to the interviewer. Does that show to you that, we spoke about the rankings and pressure? Is that where that came from with Zverev? Was he even right to kind of call out the interviewer in that respect?
I mean, the man has an ego. I think that's undeniable, the way that he kind of rose to that question, because that is what journalists are doing. That is what journalists will always be doing if they want to
They're gonna prod.
They're going to prod. They're going to try and get a story out of you. And if you have won and it was not a particularly entertaining match, they're going to say, well, you're finally winning some matches. And the other side of it is, if you're not winning, they're going to say, well, why didn't you win that? You're not winning any matches. So that it's never going to be a case that everyone's always praising you. And I think that you have to have a bit of thicker skin, because he hasn't been winning matches at the big tournaments after the Australian Open. He lost in his first match, not the first round, sorry. In Indian Wells, in Miami, he made the round of 16. Monte Carlo, he went out in his first match that he played there. And then in Madrid, it was an early exit as well. He did win two matches before he went out.
But
so
he did win Munich. He wanted to make sure that was
he did
apparent.
that, but that was not a 1,000. That was not a
Yes.
big tournament.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think it was a case that he rose to it too much. I think he doesn't necessarily win himself any more fans with that, because it wasn't a stupid question. He just took exception to the question. So you could say, yes, I am pleased I'm winning some more matches here. I've shown that I can win titles, but I'd like to get some more matches. That's all you have to say. It's not that hard. And if you do get tired of those questions, well, I mean, probably think of a better way to answer them.
Yes, and I did enjoy, because Casper Ruud was in a similar rut earlier in the year, and in Miami, very similar kind of comment from an interviewer talking about the fact that he just won his first back-to-back matches in a Masters in 11 months. And, I guess in some regard, he could have got shirty a little bit like Alexander Zverev. But no, Casper Ruud, Mr. Nice Guy on the ATP Tour, said, no, it's my own fault for losing so much.
That is so
the
fun.
Scandinavian approach?
Well, I mean, he's very much aware of those things, I think, in terms of he's very composed. I think he's understands where he is. He's an open book, isn't he? He talked about some of the struggles he had from a mental health perspective as well, and that's definitely not the school of thought that Zverev is in. So maybe we should all take a leaf out of Casper's book, and when we respond to people, we should just take it for what it is, and maybe don't think that everyone's coming after you.
Well, one player who is not in Rome is Novak Djokovic, and we've heard that he is going to be taking a wild card into the Geneva Open, which starts on the 18th of May. Chris, this is an ATP 250 event. He's played it before. What do you make of this news and the fact that he has decided to play in the immediate build up to the French Open? His record this year is 12-7. Yeah, what's your reaction to this news? The fact that Novak Djokovic, one of the greatest of all time, is going to be playing a 250 build up in Geneva.
Well, I mean, we probably fall foul a little bit to the sort of question that we just mentioned about Zverev, because we did use a thumbnail that said Novak needs a win. He does need wins. And I think that's so true, that he needs to get some match practice in prior to the French. He needs to get that confidence up. It doesn't mean he's not going to win. He did win on the clay last year at the Olympics. But this is the sort of announcement that was a hot topic last week when we said, should more people drop down a la Naomi Osaka and maybe get some great practice in? And I think we're seeing more players doing that now, and especially kind of in the run up to slams. It's not that unusual for players to do this just before if they want to get some more.
Do you think we see it more on the women's side than the men's side?
I think the men tend to have contractual obligations which they stick to from a preparation perspective. I think you might see a few more players take some last minute wild cards for the women's side. Like there's a couple of 1-2-5s next week. Yeah. I think we'll get some wild cards probably going to Strasbourg. But I do think that more traditionally, the top players on the men's side are set up so that they're able to get the best preparation. So this is an addition to the schedule. It's not ideal to play the week before a slam. A lot of people don't like doing that. So I think this is quite abnormal for Djokovic, but at the same time, in the situation that he's in,
it's abnormal times.
Yeah, we're in abnormal times for Novak Djokovic.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, he's dropped out of the top 5, so if it really does feel like any way to get some match practice
is this title 100, Joel?
I don't want it to secretly.
Will he play the whole tournament? A lot of players do that as well. They get a few matches, then they head to Paris.
The Naomi Osaka approach.
He does love doing that, yeah. But
yeah, do you know, there is a part of... I did wonder about this because I secretly don't want this to be his 100th title.
Where would you like it to be?
I mean, for his sake, I'd like it to be, I guess, at a Grand Slam or a Masters 1000 event. Having said that, the reality is at the moment he's just not playing good enough tennis for that to happen. But it just feels a little bit kind of underwhelming, I think.
Anticlimactic if this was, yeah.
I mean, if I'm the Geneva Open tournament organizer,
I'm getting stressed.
This
needs
great.
To be a ceremony.
Yeah, I'm like, that is a great PR, opportunity potentially for my tournament to have its legacy, on the tour cemented. But from Novak Djokovic's point of view, from my point of view, I'm just like, I'm not. I know a tournament is a tournament, and sometimes these statistics don't mean anything. But for something this significant,
I'm sure he'd take it though.
He would take, yeah. Yes. So anyway, yes. But that does remind me, though. I think I did want to investigate a little bit. If he does reach that 100 landmark of the big 3, what is that composite of the types of tournaments that they have won?
Ooh.
Grand Slam versus 1000 versus 500 versus
surfaces
250
as well. That could be very interesting.
So maybe some follow-up investigation is required.
Yeah, and if who finished on a big title, we can also look at as well. The last title of the greats, that could be particularly interesting.